Hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome to Braxton College's live webcast. We're here the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, trying to bring you some up-to-date topics relating to our field: fire, EMS, medical, leadership, administration, changes every time. So we have a great panel discussion tonight on a very serious topic of mental wellness. We're fortunate here in Florida that we do have some great resources. So why not highlight those resources tonight? So tonight we have Chief John Whalen, Chief Chris Bator from UCF, Dr. Deborah Bidel from Indian River, Dustin Hawkins, and from Miami-Dade Fire Rescue and the family section of the collaborative, Michele Fayette. So I want to welcome you all here. Thank you so much for joining us for this. This is such an important topic. We have been talking about it, but I don't think we can talk about it enough. So if you don't mind, I'd like you to introduce yourself and more importantly, what you're involved in from the mental health awareness perspective. And we might as well go right around the screen with, we'll start with Chris Bator, Chief Bator.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Chris Bator. I am a battalion chief with the City of Coral Springs Parkland Fire Department. I serve as the health and safety officer for the fire department. I'm also humbled to serve as the president of the Florida Firefighter Safety and Health Collaborative. And so we'll probably get a little bit more into the conversation, but everything here that we're talking about today and what I happen to be involved with is related to firefighter health and safety and that of all of our employees. So honored to be here. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. Dr. Bidel. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Bidel from Ucf Restores here in Orlando. Ucf Restores is a clinical research center and treatment clinic that's really dedicated, as we say, to changing the way that we think about, diagnose, and treat post-traumatic stress disorder. So we're involved with the collaborative as a mental health partner, and we provide both clinical services to firefighters and EMTs and paramedics in need, as well as peer support training programs.
Excellent. Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you very much for having us, Bill. Dustin Hawkins, I'm a lieutenant with Indian River County Fire Rescue, also their department and the local IAFF chaplain for the 2201. I've had the great honor and privilege of being the past director of the mental health section for the Florida Firefighter Safety and Health Collaborative, and I'm really excited the partnership between UCF and the collaborative, really centric towards firefighter and first responder health and safety, as well as the Red Line Rescue Initiative, which I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about here in further detail. Most importantly, just humbled to be here with some amazing leadership today.
Thank you. Chief Whalen.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John Whalen. I am the Deputy Fire Chief of Operations for the City of Coral Springs Parkland Fire Department. I've been in the business about almost 27 years, and I am humbled to be here today as the rest of our great group we have here. And I want to thank Braxton College and Chief McGrath for having us today. This is a great topic that a lot of people can get a lot of great information out of and be able to do something for themselves and hopefully for others. My background with BHAP and mental health and firefighter health and safety goes back to 2015 working with Chief Bator in our department to try to build a program. And since that time, we built up what we believe is a great building block and starting point for others and for ourselves. And we continue to build every day. I'm also the chair of the Broward County Fire Chiefs Association Safety and Health section, and I'm also the chair of the Florida Fire Chiefs Association Safety and Health section. So I'm honored to be here today. Thank you very much. I look forward to talking with everybody and giving as much information as I can.
Thank you, Chief. And last but not least, Michele.
Good evening. My name is Michele Fayette. I am a firefighter paramedic with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. I started my venture into mental health as a caregiver to my now ex-spouse who lives with post-traumatic stress disorder. Because of those experiences, I was grateful to not only approach but be given the opportunity with the Florida Firefighter Safety and Health Collaborative to stand up the family program that we started. And then I unwittingly and unknowingly took the brave decision on to try and fill Dustin's shoes as the co-chair of the mental wellness section of the collaborative moving forward. So I'm very grateful to be here to discuss this amazing topic tonight, with the university or with the college and with UCF as well, all doing amazing things.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much for being here. And for those that are watching, no matter which social media platform you're using, if you put comments through, we are watching the comments on the side. We're able to get some messages. So if you have some questions that you may have for some of the panelists, hopefully we can get to them. But feel free to put those comments in and we'll be able to answer those. So it's amazing, Chief Whalen, just listening to you that this just started in 2015 and 2016 with Chief Bator. It seems like you've been doing this for quite a while, and we started in this service together not so long ago, 28 years ago. So it's great to see where we were and now where we are and what's next for us. So I think that's going to be an important topic of where we're going here and how we help get everybody else to where they need to be. So I think we'll start with one of the a great topic and really great news. And Dustin and Dr. Biedel can share with us a little bit more about Redline Rescue.
You go first, Dustin.
I was hoping you were going to go first, Doc. So the amazing thing that we have coming up here, and we're in a 48-hour countdown here for really, truly a culmination of resources that just a few short years ago. And Chief McGrath, I'm glad that you pointed that out. If we look at the timeline of the fire service, to have brought the impacts of being a human in the human services industry and tragedy immersed in that cycle, the mental health conversation really has just absolutely skyrocketed into the forefront in a very short time frame. To put this in perspective, we've been talking about the impacts of heart and health, that holistic approach to the fire service, specifically in Florida, for about 30 years here. Cancer, even a shorter window in timeline. I feel like this is the first came the dinosaurs thing. We look at the cancer impact of being about 7 years. When we look at mental health and the resiliency cycle and resources and tools, it's a very short window. We just didn't know what we were dealing with, and the fire service in the United States is relatively young comparatively to other nations, but we really didn't understand and grasp the impacts of what was happening to our first responders through their the career trajectory and the impacts. So what Redline Rescue is just something that's super, super exciting, and it was born from a place of necessity, a place of pain and a place of difficulty, and realizing that we as a Florida fire service could do a much better job around changing minimum standards, getting education, getting the family involved, just going from the general, here's your EAP brochure, we wish you the best, to full-fledged automation and human support to first responders. So Redline Rescue is an idea that was ironically sketched on a napkin in 2015. And there were 4 things on that napkin that were written out. For a lot of the individuals that know the history of the collaborative, the mental health section, and where that came from, is it was based around a suicide. Ironically, the night that it was written, I still had brain matter from my best friend that shot himself in the head stuck to my T-shirt as I was writing that we need to change. We can do better than a brochure. We can do better than sending a firefighter through, which is really shown in Coral Springs how important it is to build relationships pre-crisis with culturally competent clinicians. So we realized that night in 2015 that we needed to talk about education at minimum standards. And I know Director Hallis is fantastic about supporting education, but I say this tongue-in-cheek. Out of the 480-hour block of education, we still had almost an entire week in the fire service for minimum standards on origami. The reason I say that is salvage, cover, and overhaul. Well, we put a 40-hour block on how to fold a flipping tarp, but we wouldn't talk about what happens to us psychologically when you have to bag up a 9-month-old. What happens when you go to your kid's birthday the next day? What it means to go to family counseling. So really, Redline Rescue took the education, took the referral, peer support, put it in one spot, and it wouldn't even be possible without Dr. Biedal and the UCF Restores program and foresight of academia, much like what happened with cancer with Miami, University of Miami, partnering with the collaborative, partnering with the FCSM and doing research and putting tangible products out there and one-stop shop and a place to go. UCF Restores has been phenomenal about emulating this win-win success model. So what Redline Rescue is going to do is take that static, just simple brochure and give firefighters, no matter where they go, on their phone, whether they're on the truck, they're in the back of that rescue, or, and let's be real here for a moment, or they're sitting at their dinner table because their family's falling apart, they got a fifth of scotch and a loaded 45, and they're getting ready to redesign the drywall in their house. They can pick up that phone and they have access to peer providers across the state, across the actual country now, because we have people that have registered in multiple states and we're not even live yet. And access to culturally competent clinicians that are ready, that get us, that have gone through advanced training, and really finally be the 911 for our first responders that day in, day out are out there on that street, on those trucks, to be that rescue tool for them at no impact to the end user. This isn't a pay-to-play program. This is allowing them to have access to tangible resources when they need it most. And I'm humbled by Dr. Biedel, by her guidance, by the talent at UCF, by all of the people that are working behind the scenes. And this is a huge day. So Dr. Biedel, what is Redline Rescue and why did UCF jump on board?
So when someone first told me about Redline Rescue, I'm like, what is Redline Rescue? And someone said, well, think of it like a dating app, only it's a lot better. But the idea being that if you've got a problem, you've got something, you need to talk to somebody, you're going to be able to go on Redline Rescue and find a peer support person who has been vetted, who has been trained. And if you want to talk to someone who is your age, is divorced, has teenage kids who are driving them nuts, you're going to be able to find somebody like that who's going to be able to talk to you at any time. It also means that you're going to have access to culturally competent clinicians. And what I mean by that is I get phone calls so many times from firefighters who say, I just got fired by my therapist because she says I'm traumatizing her more than she's able to help me. That drives me nuts. And so what we're doing with Redline Rescue, because you know why it drives me nuts? Because somebody has finally gotten up the courage to try therapy and they go and somebody says, oh, you're too sick for me to help you, right? That's just not appropriate and it just can't be. So what we're doing with Redline Rescue on the side is we are inviting clinicians who have completed the cultural competency training, either from the collaborative or from some other agencies that also offer it. And we're asking them to register on this site. So what we want is not people who are passionate or just passionate about helping first responders. That's the first key. But the second key is that they understand what firefighters go through. They understand what the job is like. And third, they're going to provide therapy that has some basis in effectiveness and science. So it's not going to be kind of weird stuff that you sometimes see when we're talking about trauma. It's going to be things that have a basis, because we want people who come to this site to get the very best care they can. And that's why we're putting this through, and we're vetting our clinicians so that they're going to be able to provide the support that people need. So I'm very excited about it, and I just can't wait for it to go live and get started and invite everyone to join.
So right now it's at a soft launch. Basically, it's there, but it's live this coming Friday. I did visit the site, and like you spoke of, Dustin, with the peer part, I was able to go through profiles of those people that were there and kind of pick the person that I think would best suit my needs, which is great. That's a really interesting approach. I think some people are standoffish depending on who they're going to talk to. So great approach. I think it's going to be great. It's going to be very successful. I'm glad we can get the word out today. And for those watching, please make sure you visit the site, share it through your social media, share it through your agencies. Even if you don't use it yourself, someone else might. So I think it's going to bring a lot of help, not only our state, but to anyone basically that needs the help. So again, thank you guys so much for being here. You know, we're talking, we have fire department representation here and Dr. Bidel from UCF. And I think the fire department, the IFF, the IAFC, and Florida fire chiefs are doing a really good job in the state of Florida getting our resources out and helping us. That's there for us. As a college, we train firefighters, but we also train EMTs and paramedics, and not everybody that sees what we see is fire-based. There's a lot of EMS agencies out there in county EMS or hospital-based EMS that don't have the resources, unfortunately, that we see in the fire service right now. And I might not be correct on that. But from some of your perspective, how do we take what we're doing and assure that it gets to all of the first responders that are out there? Is Restores or is Redline Rescue that avenue? Or is another organization that might be able to help us? Either one can take this.
Well, I think from the perspective of Restores, we're really set up to do some peer support training, but also we've got a clinic that provides treatment for people who have suffered from trauma. And I don't say just post-traumatic stress disorder, because trauma can lead to a variety of different reactions. So we're not going to just put everybody into one bucket and say everybody needs one thing. We're able to, work with people who have post-traumatic stress disorder, but also depression or anxiety or anger or some of the other things. So at this point, we're very proud that our services are available at no cost. And we know we can't train everyone, or we can't treat everyone in Florida, because not everybody can come to Orlando for treatment. But we're also reaching out to various communities and training clinicians in various parts of the state to do the same treatment that we do, that we know is effective. Our treatment, for example, for post-traumatic stress disorder, at the end of our 3-week intensive program, 76% of first responders no longer meet the diagnostic criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. We're proud of that. We're very proud of that. But we don't want to keep it to ourselves. That's the point. Our passion is to help first responders, and we want to get that out there to all the first responders and help everyone take advantage of the treatments.
That's excellent. And we're going to talk more about programs and how some of these agencies can, but I think, Doctor, you spoke directly to an individual that has the issue. There are resources there, even if your agency doesn't. So they may not have to go through their agency if they're not comfortable with that. So there are avenues, and we're going to discuss more of that. Dustin, you wanted to chime in on that? It looks like you were anxious.
No, I've got a schnauzer here that's pushing on me. One of the things is, initially the conversation about Redline Rescue is because it was a rule-based algorithm, tech talk for matching people, location-based services, needs, unique traumas, proclivities, and issues. And the original conversation was based around, well, who can we give this to? Who can take this? Who can run? And initially, it was like having this best kept secret, and you just wanted to give it away and get it off your shoulder because you're just going, wow, this is huge. What we found from the collaborative standpoint and partnership standpoint, and really just staring at the ceiling each night, listening to a digital clock tick, going, okay, where does the responsibility rest with this? Is who's the target market? And what I realized is I, as an individual, and with this family and with this team, didn't want another firefighter to get at the point where they're another first responder. And I'll be real specific about that, about Redline Rescue, the upcoming Blue Line Rescue, Frontline Rescue, the things that are followed. Is a first responder isn't just a hose dragger, isn't just, as I like to say, the miraculous needle fairy in the back of the rescue. Okay, it's not. The first responder is encompassed by the people that are law enforcement, that are the dispatchers, that are the crime scene investigators, the victims advocates, the people out on the plow and forestry. It's such a broad encompassing component. And one of the things when you say, whose responsibility is it? What is the answer? And what we didn't want to have happen is have Redline Rescue go to something proprietary and then really not represent the masses. So what's amazing about Redline Rescue and this relationship with UCF Restores is it crosses jurisdictional lines, prefecture lines, county entities, city entities. And for those individuals, the risk managers that are out there right now, that are looking at this and going, well, we're not going to use this because it expands our liability profile and we have a top tier program. And this is one of my favorite moments because it always makes academia cringe. To all of those risk managers that are out there right now that say, we're not going to use Redline Rescue because we got it figured out. You're part of the problem. Pull your head out of your ass. So what I want you to do is one of two things. What I want you to realize is Redline Rescue has the IAFF model, the NOVA model, the REACT UCF Restores model, the Illinois peer support, the North Carolina peer support. All of those modality evidence-based programs that are out there that the Joint Council, at the CFO's office, at the Bureau of Training and Standards acknowledges. And as they expand, we're going to add them. Here's why. We want to represent the masses. So if you feel that you're doing your membership a favor by saying Redline Rescue offers way too many resources, it offers too many culturally competent licensed clinicians, it allows my firefighter in their time of need to access it without barriers, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stop. I want you to put out that notice right now that you're going to go home as a risk manager, as a department head, as a chair that says, we do it best and nobody else. We don't want to offer more resources. I want you to say, we're going to go home and practice flag folding because I want you to be awesome at folding casket flags. That's what I want you to be good at because that's what you're going to have to do. And you're going to have to look family members in the eyes and say, you know what? We didn't want to offer comprehensive care. We didn't want to offer a multitude of resources. We wanted to offer a one-size-fits-all, and we wanted to shove it down your throat. People are unique. People are dynamic. And what works for me, what works for this panel, what works for everybody that's serving behind the badge tonight, whether in a squad car, the back of a rescue, whether they're thinking about their family rolling up on a signal for a structure fire, everybody's unique. So what Redline Rescue does is it continues to highlight and evolve. So if you're an agency that's got an amazing program, don't run from Redline Rescue. Sign them up, plug it in, program it, share it. Because what better time, what better ways to share resources. So Redline Rescue, Frontline, and Blue Line that's to come is offering all clinicians that are centric around first responder care, all evidence-based intensive patient care programs across the state and across the nation, and peer supporters that we can go back and say they took a credentialed license program. And what's amazing is the 5 peer programs, none of them are affiliated with each other. So it's a size for everybody, and that's what it's about. It's about inclusivity. So what I encourage is, if you're somebody right now that's got an awesome DHAP program, share it. Yes. Log in and send it on, and we'll make sure that it gets out there without judgment, and the rule of reciprocity is what drives it.
Thank you so much, Dustin. That's great. I think it's going to be a benefit for everybody. You know, we talk about these firefighters, and just like you brought up, Dustin, this came from a cocktail napkin based on an event. So we have to also be proactive and start looking at the people entering into the service before they have issues. And integrate their family as well into this. As a educator, when we used to start EMT and paramedic classes in orientation, we'd have them bring their parents or their significant other and say, this is what they're about to go through and they're in for the next year, 18 months, whatever it is. I think that same thing needs to take place in the fire and EMS and police services. And Michele, I think this is where you come in. Tell me how you can help.
Well, you can start that response with, starting early when we're in recruit school. We're very quick to say, this is what our recruits are going to go through in their training in the next couple of months, or, these are all of the things that they'll be exposed to, the methyl ethyl gas this, and wash your gear that, and all very, very important, not diminishing that. But as senior members of a department that are standing up in front of these recruits and families, when do we stop and say, these are some key signs and symptoms of mental health issues that you might be noticing? And so I'll ask the group that's sitting here right now, what's the universal sign for choking? Right? This is a universal sign for choking. Well, what's the universal sign for somebody suffering with a mental health issue? There's not one. And so if we start early in educating that we are likely at some point to suffer from some sort of mental health issue, and it's okay to talk about it. That's really going to be integral. What that looks like is encompassing family days, not just an hour where family comes in and there's some yummy donuts in the back of the room and everyone gets some free handouts from Pub Ed, right? These are really in-depth conversations of things to expect, signs and symptoms to watch out for, increased rates of various different types of maladaptive coping, really something to be discussing with families. The other thing that we've done on the collaborative side, and I was grateful to spearhead with an amazing group of people, is to create a statewide, which is in actuality a nationwide group of individuals, family members, caregivers, brothers, sisters, whoever it is, that join us on a web-based platform to educate themselves and to provide peer support to each other. As someone who was a caregiver to an individual that lived with PTSD, I suffered the mental health byproducts of that for 15 years. And about 12 years into that, I realized the greatest gift that I could give, the biggest alleviation of burden, was a peer support aspect. So on the collaborative side, we were able to create the first Thursday of every month at 8 o'clock. We dedicate an evening to education, which is located, the links to those are located on our Facebook page. We record that educational component and upload it for future viewing on our YouTube page for anybody to access, whether that's firefighter or family. You'd be surprised how many firefighters from across the country actually join us on these calls to learn and grow with us and have a unique platform where somebody may not know them and they can actually talk about what they're feeling in an environment where we're going to support it. The third Thursday of every month, we provide a peer support group. It's just a check-in. How you doing? Do you need resources? Do you want to talk about something? And just a guided conversation, whether it's on great books to read or self-care. And just this week, we had a great conversation with our cancer initiative team that the second Thursday of every month, we're now going to start our family face team. These are our families that are facing cancer with their firefighter, first responder in general, EMS. Let's not, like Dustin mentioned, pigeon it to one corner. The first responder in general that are living with cancer. How do I navigate the state? What are my resources? Where's my mental health? What book should I read? What does my insurance offer? These are all questions that so many people wish they had the answer to. And all of a sudden, they're shoved in the face with this diagnosis. And what better than to have a group of peers that have been through this. So the first 3 Thursdays of every month, family is the primary focus in the evenings of the collaborative. As our biggest social supports outside of our jobs, 2/3 of our lives are lived at home. We need to start making our families part of the conversation. Not necessarily bringing them into the firehouse and letting them do all the wonderful things that happen with the camaraderie, but giving them a depth of knowledge and understanding what's wrong and where to ask for help.
I think we're starting to we're at a crossroads because we're in a transition, I think, in this topic in our service. I would hope in 10 years it is commonplace, but I still think we have some that don't preach it and deal with it on a daily basis. And I know many of us have talked offline that we still have leadership. I don't think that's in Florida, but we may have leadership throughout our services that still have the suck it up attitude type of thing. That and unfortunately, the firefighters, the EMS personnel, the police officers that don't want to bring it home because they don't want to burden their family, and then they have no out. So I think everything that you're talking about is incredible pieces, from the resources that are available online and utilizing their family support as well. One of the biggest things I think is when we get to education of some of these newer students or people entering the field, and Dustin talked about it. We spend all this time, and we spend just this much time on mental health. EMS is no different. EMS, most schools, especially for paramedic, are doing well over 1,000 hours, and there's no requirement. People do have a stress chapter in the textbooks, But that's the level of it. Right now I'm the past president of Florida Association of EMS Educators, and we're revising the state EMS plan. And one of those initiatives is to integrate a certain number of hours into all initial training for EMT and paramedic. And I hope that we can piggyback what you guys have done from the fire college perspective and utilize what's already built so we can create a standard message. So hopefully I'll be able to help with that to get what you've already created into the EMS side.
Yeah, Bill.
Yes.
Bill, I just want to interject there. I'm glad
Absolutely.
you brought that up because that was a point that I think was kind of missing here. I'm not sure if everybody knows it. If you're already in the fire service, you haven't gone through that training. But if you're a new recruit and you're coming through the fire service now, you are getting that type of training. So in the state of Florida, we certainly work with our partners here with UCF and our partners with University of Miami to establish curriculum with the fire college and work together on providing 2 hours of mental health curriculum and cancer prevention curriculum that is now mandatory in the book. I mean, that's kind of a game changer when you're talking about coming into the fire service. So if we want to start talking about changing the culture within the fire service, you certainly have to start at the entry level. Those young firefighters and EMS responders who are starting to come in are going to start asking the question, where is my bucket? How do I get to these things? And when you start asking those questions enough and they've gone through it in the fire academy and they don't see it in their organizations, that is going to slowly change the culture. So I'm glad you brought that up. It does exist. And I think that you're right on target. There's no reason to kind of reinvent the wheel.
Right.
I can say that, with our collaborative team, because there's a lot of good work being done throughout the state of Florida. There's a lot of good work being done by fire departments and fire service leaders and EMS leaders throughout the state. And there's no reason to start all over. Let's take what they have. Let's build on that. Let's share those resources. And then let's modify it. We've often said, let's just take people's policies, remove the logos, do what you want with it, and copy it. In fact, that's kind of what the collaborative is really based on. Is really more about sharing resources, and we want to drive people to that website to take what they want. It's all free. All you got to do is log in, get as many resources. It does cover everything from overall firefighter safety, mental health resources that we're talking about here today. We're talking about mental health programs. Take it. We want you to actually use it. You can modify it. It doesn't, it's a person, it's an EMS personnel versus a firefighter. You can
Right.
remove the word firefighter, put paramedic. It's the same scenario. So we want you guys to have access to that by going there. And that's what it is. It's really an informational sharing resource. One of the things that we learned very early on is that, in the fire service specifically, there's a lot of pride, and pride is always a good thing, but it does get in the way of progress. And sometimes we hold that very close to our vest. And when we're talking about life and death and overall firefighter safety, I think it's important that the more we can share is the right thing we should be doing. Let's open this up. There's no cost associated. Let's make sure that we're getting it to everyone out there if possible. There's no agenda here other than their overall health and wellness. So I'm just really proud to be a part of an amazing team that's always working and looking for the next thing of how we improve that. And slowly but surely, more and more organizations are in the collaborative. We're all over the state in 7 different regions. We have monthly meetings. This past year was a little rough with COVID, but we would actually have these physical meetings where we can actually bring fire departments together, bring EMS providers together to start having the conversation a little bit more and working on these things. And one of the things that I did want to just add is, although we entered that into the baseline curriculum, part of it is now being redone to be entered into fire officer programs. So when you're talking about now doing it at the entry level, now we have to make sure we're addressing it at the fire officer level and up throughout the organization to change that culture.
So it's funny you brought that up, because that was my next question for Chief Whalen here. So I have 2 questions. One to Chief Whalen, and then we'll have the follow-up with Dr. Biedal and to Dustin. First, for the people that are watching, regardless if you have a program in your agency, someone has to be watching out for each other, right? So we always look in our service to the officers first. They should be watching over their personnel and recognizing these things. So my question for Chief Whalen, if you were to start, if a chief is watching, an administrator is watching, anyone, how would you prepare your officers, maybe some type of training program to recognize things or their crew members? And then the follow-up question to Dr. Bidel would be, what are they looking for? What are those signs that are the obvious signs? There is no check marks. It could be different for everybody, but the ones that we shouldn't dismiss. So let's start with you, Chief Whalen.
Chief, thank you. The most important thing I think that anybody watching needs to remember is, regardless of the resources that you have at your disposal, you can start with nothing, which almost everyone here that you're looking at today that's on this panel, we didn't start with a great big abundance of resources or money or even information. We started with nothing, and we slowly had to build that up as we started getting involved. It didn't cost us anything for a long time until we started investing in our members and investing in our department and in our people. And that took a while to get, but at the beginning, it didn't cost us anything. It was just meeting and greeting, reaching out to people, speaking to experts, going to conferences, things like that. So if anybody is on the podcast today and listening and thinks that, well, my department will never do this, we're a one-horse department, or we're a small EMS agency in the middle of the state, we're never going to have the availability to do this. That is not true. It only takes one person to care enough to put the effort forth to reach out to somebody, to look on the internet, find out if you're in the EMS field, what are firefighters doing? What are police doing? And so you can start at that. As far as a company officer goes, and this can be a supervisor at an ambulance company, this can be, they're, in my opinion, the most important party in this, the most important component in this, the BHAP business or the mental wellness, because they're the ones on the ground. They're the ones that know their people. They know their members. They know if somebody's acting different, or if somebody is not right, or if they were on a bad call. They know that before any chief is going to know that, or Chief Bator. We don't find that out until well after the fact that something is going on. It's those people with the boots on the ground. Now, with that being said, somebody has to pay attention to them. So what Chris and I like to use is the buddy system. There's always somebody checking on somebody. And that goes all in our organization, all the way up to the fire chief. After the Stoneman and Douglas incident, we were there for days, like 45 days straight. We were there trying to do all these resources and all these different things to make sure our members were okay. Somebody had to be responsible for going to the fire chief or to the deputy chief and saying, you've been here for 10 days. You need to go home. You need to be with your family. You need to take a break. You're done. And then give them resources. So the buddy system really works. As far as resources go, Bill, again, it doesn't take a lot to get the ball rolling. Dustin, if you ever heard him speak in a larger group, has a great story about EAP. That used to be that was it. That's what your department in your city or your county or whoever you work for, your ambulance service, that's what they had. They pulled it out of a drawer. They blew the dust off it. They shook it, looked at it, and said, I think that we still have this. Here you go. And that was it. And that was only if the person was willing to go speak to somebody about it.
Oh, I think that still exists, Chief. That still exists.
100% does still exist. And that's why we exist, all the people on this podcast. And that's why Red Line Rescue exists, is specifically because of that reason. Because we didn't feel, and Dustin specifically and his group did not feel that was appropriate, that it was not, it actually did more harm than good, which is, as a medic, is our edict not to do. This is the same thing. This is the mental health aspect of do no more harm. Don't give them that EAP number. You might as well give them a gun in certain circumstances. So with that being said, the people that either individuals, small agencies, all the way up to major agencies, you have to have somebody that's passionate to reach out to people like Michele, people like Chris, people like Dustin, to get that ball rolling. And even if it's a peer support for a department of 4, that's one more than they had previously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Michele, you had something to add real quick, and then we'll get to Dr. Bidel?
Sorry, Dr. Bidel. The last thing I want to do is step on that lovely lady's toes. I also think it's really important to remember, and Chief Whalen was alluding to it in not specific terms, but people are just people. regardless of the amount of bugles that you wear on your collar, we're all waking up the same way in the morning. We're all experiencing things and taking in experiences differently. And so regardless of the rank that you're wearing on your collar, the ability to turn to somebody else and express, how you're feeling, and more importantly, have that other person listen to you in return with the same level of vulnerability is really key. And that said, in doing research, for my own benefit, looking at my department and things that we're doing, I had the fortunate experience of speaking with Dan DeGrace on the phone. Dan DeGrace is, a leader in mental health in Chicago. And when Dan looked at Chicago's data and looked at New York's data, they actually found that somewhere of upwards of like 95% of their membership went into the union for help and outside of their organization. So while Coral Springs Parkland has an illustrious program that many people are emulating now, data still shows that a significant amount of first responders are going to go to their union for the help first, for whatever reason it is. We can sit here and list them. So we need to make sure that we're growing out these resources and growing out everything that we're referring to on a union side as well, and that it is not solely housed, in the organization, with one chief, with one chaplain or one bureau, and make sure that everybody can be responsible to everybody, regardless of where you sit in the hierarchy of leadership.
That great points. So, Dr. Biedal, let's talk about, I wish there was a checklist that we could follow that would make it easier on us. And there's too many times where we didn't think that there was any signs and symptoms, and we have a suicide, and someone says, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. Who would have known? Why didn't they ask for help?" What, in a brief perspective or on a novice perspective, what can we look for on the surface? What can we do?
Yeah, I think what you really look for on the surface is really a change in someone's behavior or their attitude. So what we're really looking at is how are these people different now? How might this event have impacted them? So one of the things that we think about is, part of PTSD is really avoidance of those triggers that remind you of the event. So from a perspective of work, we can look at, are there people who are trying to avoid certain calls? Do they not want to go certain places, if that's a possibility? A second thing is really a change in how they're feeling. And this is mostly in terms of irritability or anger. So someone who was never angry before is suddenly very short-fused. And why is that? Because people who have PTSD have trouble sleeping. They have trouble relaxing. So they're always wired up and they're on edge. And that can come out as anger or irritability. The third thing is if there's a change in their use of substances. So, particularly we know for men that many men will use alcohol as a way of trying to calm down and relax and feel better. So when we see people who are using more alcohol than usual, who may be coming to work drunk, or who may be not coming in, calling in sick on Fridays and Mondays, or, I know firefighters have different schedules. It's not Monday through Friday, but they're not coming in on the day they come back. They're supposed to come back to work because they may be too hungover to come in. Those are the kind of tips that other firefighters and administrators should look at least it calls for a conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean that that person has PTSD, but it means that something is wrong. And I think that's critically important. And I want to say one thing about suicide, because one of the things we know about suicide is it's sometimes very hard to prevent because people don't tell you, particularly when people really want to do it, they're not going to talk about it. But one of the things we know that is good at preventing suicide is that connection. So reaching out to other people and that social contact. And you don't have to say, hey, are you thinking about hurting yourself? It's that, hey, how are you doing? We haven't talked in a while. What's going on? But that social connection, letting someone know that someone else is there and that someone else cares, has been shown to really decrease the rate of completing suicide. It's a sudden thought people have. They get the thought and then they go ahead and they do it. And so there's this critical window, but knowing that other people are there and reaching out, I say, you may think you're throwing somebody a line on Facebook and you may be throwing them a lifeline. So I think that's really important to keep in mind.
That's a great point. I think when I brought up the officer part or supervisor part, some of the resistance, especially people that have been doing this for a while that are now integrating into this, they're saying, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Right.
So, I'm not trained in this. So who am I to talk to my personnel about that? And that's probably the worst thing you can do, as opposed to just saying, hey, everything good? How are you doing? It doesn't, you don't need to be a counselor, but you do need to be a friend. Just knowing that someone's there, like you said, is a great point.
Part of that, Chief McGrath, is training.
Yes.
As you're getting your initial training now in school, in fire school, hopefully soon in all medical programs, but the department that you work for, the agency that you work for, the company that you work for, they have to provide the minimum training so the company officer knows what to do and what to look for and what to say. So that they shouldn't be left going, man, I don't know. I don't know what to say to this person. That's unfair to do to them. So like in our department, we do training, basic training for our entire department on this topic, on this subject. It's built right into our yearly training. We make sure that they know what to do, what to ask, what to look for. And if all those hours of training helps one person, it was a success.
So I'm gonna have one final question, and just exactly on that, and then I'm gonna let you all kind of give your own parting words. Like, what would be your message to anyone that's watching? So my final question is for those that are watching, Chief Whalen, like you said, where do they go first to start that training program? What would be your recommendation of where do I start first? Because they probably don't have anybody within their organization, or they probably would have already done it. Like Michele said, we need that one person. We need somebody that's willing to do it. And there are so many resources out there that Chief Bator and yourself and Dustin and Dr. Biedal and everybody here has put out there. So when we want to train the trainers, where do they start?
So I'm actually gonna defer that to Chief Bator, and there's a reason for that, because Chief Bator actually did this. You know what I mean? He started this from zero, from the ground, and in our department to where it is today. So I'm going to let him answer that.
First of all, I got to tell you, I think that's a great conversation here. Like, where do people go? And I often get that question, like, where do I even start? Even creating something, and how do I even start that? So the first thing you got to do is really look within your own organization. Before you start looking for answers everywhere else of what you need, you have to know what you actually have. Many of our people don't know what they actually have. And you might think but you may really not know the full depth of it, right? So if you do have an EAP program, you might hear rumors about it, but why not test it out? Why not feel what that looks like? Why not go through the process yourself to figure out if it actually works, if it doesn't work, and go through that? So identifying the areas of weakness or areas where you can improve on or take an opportunity on is important to start off first. So always look within before you start looking outside. Many times you start reaching for things that you think others have and that you need, and you start trying to fill a void before you kind of move. So if the first step to do is always look within, then kind of work it out. And then I would say, look within your region. Most of us talk to each other. We all are dealing with some of the same things. And if we could work beyond our confined areas of our own departments and start talking with other departments and sharing ideas, really kind of coming together. I mean, this year has been kind of an anomaly with COVID, where we've kind of pushed isolation, which is really a whole nother issue. I think if the more we can kind of work and take our patches off and work together on some of these things,
like collaborative.
Yeah, like a collaborative, right? And kind of work on some of these things together, you'll find that there is some common information that you guys are going to share, and you could relay it, and you can use that to your advantage. I'll give you a perfect example. I didn't even know that the cities that were bordered me had Cigna insurance. We have Cigna insurance. And until I started asking questions about other departments to find out that they also had Cigna, I used that leverage to actually create a large-scale meeting with a state representative for Cigna, which eventually got me to a national opportunity to speak with a national behavioral health consultant that actually now supports our collaborative mission. So when you use others around you, the power of many can certainly help the power of the small. One other thing I do want to include in here is often when you come into the fire service, you expect your fire service leaders to always have the answers, right? That's just expectation that the fire chief and everybody above you is making the decisions and doing all the things that you had. One of the things I ended up finding out was that's not always the case. And I'll give you two perfect examples. When it comes to mental health, certainly the cancer aspect of things that we've worked on the last couple of years, the leaders didn't know this information. They didn't know how to do it. And yes, we're the fixers of the public, right? We are always responding to calls and fixing everybody else's problems. So we feel like we always have to come up with the answers. Well, they didn't have the answers. So it's okay to reach out outside of your organization. Let's connect with universities. Let's talk to them. I never thought that I would have a relationship with a university growing up, right? I never thought that that was something that even the fire service would even do, because we're always, kind of think we know what we're supposed to be doing all the time. I'm doing it better than you are. You're doing it better than I am. We have that competition, right? And some competition is good, but other times it does get in the way when it comes to overall health and safety. So why not go beyond your constraints and reach out to partners? They're willing to talk to you. They're willing to work with you. And we're seeing more and more of that, where we can reach beyond the constraints of our own organizations to kind of get the resources that we actually need to help us build programs that we have built.
That's great. Thank you so much. So we've been at this for almost an hour. Dustin, you want to go ahead and chime in real quick before we give you guys each a parting word here?
Absolutely. I almost wish all of the members that were on here that tune into this amazing broadcast here could really see when you get a bunch of firefighters together, and even clinicians are just as messed up as we are. If y'all could see the chats on the side here, it's amazing to show the love. Absolutely getting hammered here. One of the things that I find is amazing is there's three different things I'd like to address here. Number one is anybody that's tuning in to talking about improving their mental wellness programs, finding out what a BHAP is, finding out what they can expand upon. This is something I just want to point out. There's no one size fits all. Know what the baseline is of the person you're trying to help. Everybody wants a checklist. In the fire service, we want an SOG or an SOP or a tactic to fit a situation. And then when we recognize that situation, practice makes permanent with what we do on the fire ground. And one of the questions that came up here was, what do we do about a firefighter that all of a sudden is happy, all of a sudden is joyous, and then complete suicide? Well, I'm going to give you a secret here. For the individuals that say, listen, somebody who's advocate about resiliency, from going from grief to growth, for somebody who is a chaplain, for somebody who is about family and about connectivity. Listen, I'm going to give you the biggest secret right here. Nobody knew the day that I tried to kill myself. I got caught. Okay, and here's why. Here's the secret. You can't read another person's mind. It's impossible, I promise you. Give it a shot. If you think you can, you need to get married. Your spouse will teach you otherwise that you can't read your dang mind. Here's the deal, though. You do have something that is absolutely empowering. Now, I want you to take classes. I want you to talk to your fire officers and your company officers about knowing a baseline, knowing when to interact. But there is absolutely beautiful recommendations out there on what you can say. But if you haven't taken a class, you haven't taken a program, I want you to remember this. People will forget what you said in the long term. I guarantee people will forget what you did, even when you're a human being and do some really stupid stuff. But a person that you help, a person that you engage, a person that you sit down will never, for as long as they live, until they rest their bones to ash, will never forget how you made them feel. So if you have a baseline of a firefighter and all of a sudden it changes, this is what I task you with. Sit your ass down in front of them and be human, because you can't read their mind. The hardest thing for you to do is not to say, well, I don't have an SOG. I don't have a program. I don't have a protocol. I don't have a peer support. I don't have Senate Bill 376 that makes it a compensatable injury. I don't have mandated education. You know what you have? You're a first responder. Now, whether you're an EMS agency, a firefighter, a paramedic, whatever the case may be, you will give kindness and compassion to perfect strangers. You'll go above and beyond. People you don't even know. What the secret is, what I task you with, do it for the person that you know. Do it for the person sitting next to you, riding backwards in the seat. Know where their baseline is. Build those relationships with the people you serve a third of your life with. Hell, you see changes in your family. Be willing to be protective of them. Sit down and say, this is what I see. And if you don't know what to do, be honest. I don't know what to do, but I'm willing to take the walk with you. So to that question that scrolled across, what do we do with the firefighter that becomes joyous and then's gone? Listen, one of my closest friends who got me to therapy every single day, made sure I was there, checked in, supported, lifted mental wellness, was there to help, got in his Class A uniform the night we were supposed to have cocktails and shot himself in the head with a gun I bought for him on his birthday. Never said a word. Planned out his entire funeral service. I served with this guy for an entire lifetime in a special ops team doing some really dark and dirty and downright absolutely disturbing stuff. I couldn't read his mind. He taught me that. And I asked him 100 times, are you okay? This is what I see. This is what we need to go. He was signed up for therapy sessions. So for those of you out who have lost a member of your team and said they all of a sudden got happy, I'll give you a secret to somebody who's struggling with suicidal ideation. They got happy because they finally found a solution to what they thought was an unsolvable problem. It's not your fault. But me flicking that switch and saying it's not your fault, it's not going to let you off the hook. You're still going to carry hurt. You're still going to carry pain. And it's easy as hell to what if. Firefighters and EMS, we do it by default. We are the best armchair quarterbacks you will ever meet, and we will tear you a new yahoo if we think you did wrong when we have all the information. So what I want you to do right now is if you know somebody that is in your company, is in your family, is in your crew, is in your leadership, and you know their baseline and it's changed, and you feel it right here. You only get one time to show up for another human being in your entire life. And if you feel like, oh man, I've got this going on, but they need me, set that stuff aside. Show up, because they'll forget what you said, they'll forget what you did, but they'll never forget the feeling of showing up. And that's a protective factor that Dr. Biedal talked about. That's a protective factor that our family caregiver coordinator talked about. Because if you see it, be willing to show up. And the only thing you have to override is the scarcity and the scare that comes from the pause. And everybody here on this panel has experienced it. All of those out there have listened to it, have experienced it. And if you're going to get into mental health, you're going to experience the pain of the pause. And I'm going to give you an example. This is what I see. I don't have all the answers. I can't read your mind, but I'm worried for you. Can I help? And then you're going to experience a pause that's going to scare the hell out of you. And then deep inside, you're going to scream, man, I hope they say they're all right. But if they say, no, I'm not, it's time to act. It's time to do. So exercise your resources. Find out what you have in your area. Don't focus on what's wrong. Focus on what's right. Reach out to the collaborative, reach out to your local universities, help develop those peer support teams. The journey is long, but you know what? Each one of us gets one lifetime. We don't know how many days that is. You could die on your first day of somebody who's just a few hours old, or you could be a schmucker's baby and live 110. But we all get one lifetime and one only. So show up for the people in your life. Reach out to these agencies like UCF Restores. Take a peer support training class. Be an officer that's willing to sit down at the kitchen table and be open about your human struggles and that you don't have all the answers. And you're going to save somebody's life, and you may never get to know their name. Chief Rick Hartzog from Lakeland Fire Rescue reached out to us a short while ago and said, I got to tell you a confession. We know that redlinerescue.org and the relationship with UCF isn't live yet. One of our members reached out to one of those peer providers in a moment of weakness and a moment of a breakdown, and they saved their lives. Now, I only want to correct a few things. They weren't weak. They were strong. They reached out for help. They didn't have a breakdown. Hot damn it. They had a breakthrough. They didn't hit rock bottom. They took a hand and they walked a journey, not up, because they weren't below. They're a human being in the human experience. So for those of you who see a firefighter that's out there struggling, pick up the phone when you get off this podcast. You may not know what to say, but you damn sure can tell them you love them, you see a change, and you're willing to help. Be willing to take the journey. So I thank you all for that. And what I wanted to point out is know the baselines. Be willing when you see a baseline change to take a journey and walk with them. And you will slowly build from an idea to a state that has workers' comp protective measures, to a collaborative that gives a crap about all ideas, uploads them, shares them, and builds relationships with amazing universities. And you'll see the change. So I appreciate everybody's time.
Thank you so much, Dustin. Any of you want to follow up with that? So, Dr. Bidel, just in closing, I know we spoke before, same as Dustin. If you had one message with anyone that's watching, whether that be an individual or an agency, please, now's our platform.
I just first of all want to thank all of you for what you do every day. Those of us who are civilians, do not forget that you are always there for us and that you go rushing in when other people go running out. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've actually sometimes been asked, why don't I help prevent PTSD? Why don't I do something so that people don't get it? And I say, because then I'm not dealing with human beings, then I'm dealing with machines. And I want the person who's going to go and try and rescue me because of their love of service and their love of other people. I think Dustin is absolutely right, though. You cannot say the wrong thing. Okay, that's what you have to get out of your head. You cannot put thoughts of suicide into someone's head. Stop thinking like that. What you do, no matter what you say, is you're reaching out to someone and you're giving them a hand, and that's really what matters. So Dustin is more eloquent about this than I am sometimes, but just know that you can't say the wrong thing. We all need to be there for each other. If this last year has taught us anything, it's taught us the importance of social connection. And that's what's going to keep us all together and weave us all together. I met Chris Bator for the first time when I was asked to go down to Parkland and talk to some of the families down there. And I just thought, I'll stop by the fire department and see what's going on. And that's how our relationship actually got started. So you never know where that connection is going to take you. But please take that time, help out each other and be there. And that's what's going to keep us all together. And thank you for this wonderful opportunity to be on this panel with all of you tonight. It's an extreme privilege on my part.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Chief Bator.
Yeah, Bill, thanks again for having us. I reiterate the thoughts that the other two prior to me have said, and I obviously would just say, let's have the conversation. Those that you're going to lose. You just don't know how many you're going to save. So I would just say, have that conversation. Don't be afraid of what the response is. And as Dustin said before, let's walk side by side together. So again, thank you guys for being here. Make sure to reach out. I'm just privileged again to be a part of this. Everybody on this group was a connection that we did. Connectivity is such a big part of it, and reaching out beyond your own fire department, your own agency, et cetera. So a lot of good things happen when you collaborate.
Thank you so much for being here also, Chief Bator. Michele.
What I'll say is this, as first responders, we get hired in this business to get into all the stuff that are going to save other people, to go down that dark hallway and save a life, or, to start CPR and work that big mega code like we learned in school. And the reality matter is a lot of what we do is taking care of other people, and we neglect taking care of ourselves. So I encourage everybody out there to take care of themselves, so there's enough to go around for everybody else, for your families, and for the people that you work with. Because when you turn around in that fire and you need to rely, on someone to help you, it's going to be your partner behind you on that hose line. It's going to be, that person in that jump seat on a rescue. And so take care of yourselves and make sure you have enough in return to give to the people who are there for you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Michele. And last but not least, Chief Whalen.
Again, I want to say thank you very much for having us, Bill, and to Braxton College and to my co-hosts on the podcast tonight. This was truly an honor, and it's something that's so important in the fire service, in EMS, for dispatchers, police, all the frontline people. We're here for you. So I want to end by saying, anybody that's watching this, don't reinvent the wheel. A lot of us have done years of work to get even where we're at today. We share everything. Nothing is proprietary except for Dustin's pants selection. Other than that, we share it all. So there is nothing that when you call, if you reach out to one of our organizations, to us directly, to anybody on this call, we will provide you with anything, SOPs, SOGs, resources. Please don't try to reinvent the wheel and start from scratch. We've already done that for you. And thanks again.
Thank you so much, Chief Whalen. Again, thank you all for being here. It's such a, it's an important topic. I don't think we could talk about it enough. There's been websites scrolling across the bottom throughout the podcast. This is going to be recorded, so you'll be able to see it again on our Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube channel. It'll be linked through several of the panelists that are here through their channels as well. But please start with Redline Rescue, UCF Restores, Coral Springs, the Health and Safety Collaborative. There's so many resources out there. Again, like Chief Whalen said, that are the hard work is done. Now it's up to you to implement it. So we want to spread that word. Again, thank you guys so much for coming. We really do appreciate it. We thank everybody that's joining in, that has watched this tonight, and we saw a lot of your feedback coming through, so we appreciate that. And we'll be back in 2 weeks on the 28th of this month, where we have a couple docs, Dr. Roach and Dr. Gandia will be here. We're going to talk more about how to increase some of our patient outcomes, starting with dispatch. We're going to start with dispatch all the way into the ER, and we'll kind of talk about some of the newest topics that are out there. So again, thank you all for joining us tonight, and everybody have a safe night, and please utilize your resources there. Everyone's here. Reach out if you need help. Thank you again.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.